From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the business of esports. The Business of Esports podcast is sponsored by Esports Entertainment Group, a leading esports and online gambling company. For more information, go check them out at esportsentertainmentgroup.com. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Jimmy Barada and William Collis. For those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome to the official podcast of esports. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. For our regular listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Thank you for all the love, the 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. If you haven't yet, go leave a review on the Business of Esports podcast or tell your friends, family, colleagues how much you love it. It's the best way to help us out and support us. If you haven't already, also go check out William's book, The Book of Esports. Just a quick reminder. I know many of you bought it, so you can go leave a review on that.
Spanish language edition. Just
there you go. Can they get it on Amazon, William?
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can get it wherever books are sold. First foreign language edition. So check it out, guys. It's done really well. Very
cool. And some merch, guys. businessofesports.shop if you want to check out some of the Business of Esports merch. It's always appreciated. How are you guys doing this week? Jimmy, William?
First things first, I got to play Apex last night again, and I'm all in. I uninstalled Call of Duty,
really?
Going for it. Lifeline is who I go with, and I love it. I can't say enough good things about it. I'm having so much fun.
Interesting. Why Lifeline? It's a support character, right?
Even in WoW, I was always a priest or some type of shaman healer, and I like the support. I used to run tank back in the day, but you never have trouble finding a group in like an MMO if you're the healer, right? I
don't know if this is exactly the same, but yeah.
It's not. I just stuck with it. And I love the game. It's so great.
That's so funny because
EA and Respawn, I'm sure, are really happy to hear this, that you've ditched Call of Duty. What did you feel about the Call of Duty video? Did you see this trailer, Jimmy?
For season 5 that just came out like yesterday?
No,
or the day
for
before?
The new Call of Duty coming this holiday season, I guess.
I haven't seen the trailer for that yet. I saw the announcement for the new season on Warzone that I think was announced, that launched yesterday, but I haven't checked out the new COD that's coming out.
Well, because the tables are turning, right? The new COD's going to be like World War II set, right? Like old guns, old stuff, and the new Battlefield is all modern now. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm actually more excited now about the new COD that it's World War II set. I always liked the World War II setting for COD. More authentic. It was more true to the original.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, legacy Call of Duty gamer king. Well, I was just gonna say I've been getting into Valorant, guys. I've been getting pretty into Valorant recently. Going back, playing a little bit of Yoru, like faking people out with those footsteps. So
it's not a story we're covering this week, William, and now I'm forgetting who said it, but there was an executive at a gaming company, and I'm sure you maybe saw the same thing, that said they believe Valorant's going to be the biggest game, in the world in the next couple of years, basically.
I believe it. All my students at UC Irvine, every single one of them, whenever I give them the option to cover whatever title of their preference, it's like 90% Valorant stories and like one Smash or something different.
Everyone tell those UC Irvine students that there is a Bronze 2 warrior right here grinding it.
Guys, we have an amazing guest this week, so I don't want to delay any longer. But we have on this week's podcast none other than Nick Gross. Nick Gross is the founder of Gross Labs. Nick, welcome to the Business of Esports podcast.
Man, I'm so ecstatic to be on this podcast with you guys. Thank you so much for having me. My man Jimmy Barada is here in the flesh. I haven't seen him in 15 years. We grew up, went to high school together. So this is a fun one, guys. Thank you.
Nick, has he changed? Does he look any different?
You know, he's still got that baby face, you know, going on. You know, he's always been an attractive man. I think he's kind of
because that's the
same,
story
you know?
he tells, right? He tells people in high school he was a huge stud. I mean, just he was the
clearly. Minus
Jimmy
a few
was
tattoos.
He was always passing his classes and was always a good energy on campus for sure. So yeah, good to see you guys.
Good to
I just got to convince my fiance Nick. I want to get the bleach blonde hair, you know, and
do it
a little more like you.
It'll burn your scalp pretty bad in the beginning, and then you'll start to get used to it, like I have over the last 20 years of doing it.
Nick, for anyone of our listeners who maybe don't know you or don't know about you, would love if you could give your background, how you got into gaming, you know, what you're focused on now, what Gross Labs is all about, other things you're involved in, like just some of the Nick Gross story.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always hard to answer that question, you know, because I feel like I've been very lucky to be able to get involved with a lot of different, you know, industries and avenues over the last 10, 15 years, really. But yeah, my background's in music. I first and foremost, I'm a drummer. You know, I originally started a band in high school. Jimmy knows this, that was lucky enough to kind of be on an MTV show called MTV Laguna Beach. We had our first record deal with Sony Epic when I was a 17-year-old kid, and, you know, was supposed to head off into college like a lot of kids think that they have to go do. And thankfully, I felt really lucky to kind of be able to tap into a talent and a you know, industry that I was really passionate about super early on. Like a lot of these young kids in esports have found, you know, even younger than 17 years old, which is crazy to think about. But that really led me into, you know, a career path in music, which was really great. And so I spent, you know, better part of 18 to 23 years old just touring around the country with my first band, and you know, had a lot of ups and a lot of downs. The downs for sure were getting dropped by our major record label with Sony Epic, you know, 3 years into the deal, and just learning, you know, I didn't know a ton about the music industry. I was young, I was excited, I was on the road just like any 18-year-old kid would be. And, you know, I think getting dropped eventually led me to really start to get into the understanding the music business more, you know, like I never knew what music publishing was. I never knew what record labels really did. It's kind of like you just sign on the dotted line and hope for the best, and you're just having fun. So, you know, really after that experience with my first band, it kind of brought me into allowing me to start my own recording studio here in Los Angeles. And so I started to write a lot of other songs for other artists, and had met a ton of different songwriters and producers over the time with my first band, and just started to collaborate. You know, I started to get cuts on, you know, Ariana Grande's album and Wiz Khalifa, and I don't know, some of these like somewhat recognizable names in music, and started my first studio here in Los Angeles. It was originally called Stars Enterprises, and it was my kind of foray into, I guess, more of the business side of music. And I kicked off a first label where I signed, you know, 2 or 3 acts that I had kind of technically incubated here out of my studio, and really learned a lot about what it's like to run a record label, and not just be a studio owner. And, you know, a lot of the kind of strategy for me was just, you know, how can I start to add value to the artists that I was signing to the label at the time? And for me, that was aligning myself with different brands and different, you know, organizations and different things that could essentially help grow the success of my talent. So I started to make just small little investments into companies. I guess you can kind of, you know, think of it like a, you know, kind of my venture investment arm towards what I was doing with Stars to help a lot of the artists. And so a lot of different consumer products and digital media platforms that could just help get the name brand out for some of the artists that I was working with. And so, yeah, it started to kind of just naturally for me, just get into more of these areas across music and investing and, you know, from an operator lens, you know, just all these different things kind of combining together. And, you know, really where I'm at today is Gross Labs is kind of my, you know, investment operating and incubation arm, essentially, that houses a lot of the projects that I work on. And so, you know, music is definitely a key area that we have a strong focus in, just because of my background. you know, we have a label called Big Noise. The Noise Nest is my content facility. We have a 10,000 square foot facility here, which I'm broadcasting from right now, that houses a lot of our talent on the label side. And then we also work with a lot of external labels that want to come in and use our space, which has been really great. You know, we've aligned ourselves with an incredible esports organization called ReKTGlobal that I've been, you know, the largest investor and on the board of that business for the last 5 years as we've kind of grown that business out, which has been great. And yeah, and I have an early stage education company called Find Your Grind, which has been honestly my biggest exciting venture personally, just because of the impact that it's making on our next generation of kids and helping schools and students just really start to figure out what direction they want to go in life and who they want to become. And so we've built a pretty compelling digital curriculum that lives inside of the school space across the country. So yeah, it's a lot of different things, man. But Gross Labs is kind of my centralizer, you know, holding company that, you know, sits on top of all this stuff, man. So it's definitely busy, but a lot of fun.
So one crucial thing I think you might have left out there, Nick, if I can nerd out for a second, which is, didn't you used to also be the drummer for Goldfinger? I want to say.
Yeah, I still play. I left the drumming thing out, but yeah, you know, drumming being it's my biggest focus and the thing I love to do the most, to be honest. And how a lot of these things kind of came into my life was through music and through the drums. And yes, John Feldman is the singer of Goldfinger. I play drums with his band all of the time. It's an honor to take the stage with them. And John and I run a label, run Big Noise together as well. So
just, you know, just a connection. I think this might have been before you synced up with the Goldfinger folks, but you know, Superman, their song is like part of my earliest game memories on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack, right? So that's actually like, it's funny. That was a real moment for me where I remember thinking, wow, like, whoa, music in games, like there's a lot more here than, you know, just like, you know, having some chip tunes to go, you know, jump on, you know, Goomba's heads with. So just want to shout that out because I thought that was a super cool connection. In your background.
It's so funny. I mean, you think of, really, that was the moment where esports, you know, video games and music collided in a big moment to kind of cross over both of those industries in a way that really broke Goldfinger as a band at the time. And really, you think of that game, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, serendipitous with that song. And it's so funny. I don't know if you guys saw the TikTok that was just created by Avril Lavigne, but John Feldman met Tony Hawk for the first time a month ago. They had never met together. And
That's crazy.
I was at Avril's house. She was filming some TikTok around Skater Boy. It's her 20th anniversary of the song. Yep. And she's doing tricks with Tony Hawk. Tony comes in the house and John Feldman's just sitting there. And there was this moment, I have it on my phone, on my iPhone, of them meeting for the first time, shaking hands, going, they were just like, thank you so much. Like, it was the craziest experience ever. And I never put the footage out. It's on my phone.
So maybe that's actually an interesting segue for you to talk about, because I do think THBS was the first moment, at least in my life, where I found music through games, right? Where I would hear a band and I'd be like, oh, man, I got to listen to that band. I got to go. I think it was CDs. I got to go get their CD, you know, like I'm going to go over to Sam Goody or whatever. But, you know, obviously a huge piece of what you're doing today is, you know, music plus games, you know, and things have evolved a lot since, you know, the days of the original, you know, warehouse level in Tony Hawk. Maybe tell us, what's your view at a high level, you know, on the intersection of games and music today, and how do you see the two overlapping and your investment in Rekt synergizing with your background in music?
I mean, it's what a great way to be breaking new songs and new talent through esports and through this industry, right? Where so many young kids live and where this next generation spends so much of their time, you know? And so it's like, obviously the audience of what esports brings, any type of music, you look at the Travis Scott, you know, what he did with all of a sudden the Marshmello concert that, you know, blew up records across people that could actually go watch a concert virtually through it. And just finding ways for those industries to collide has been really interesting for us. I mean, we just signed a new artist. His name's Mod Sun. He's having a pretty cool moment right now in the alternative space. And we actually just did a song for a pretty big game, and it's I'm not remembering what the game was, but yeah, just finding like ways for a lot of the music stuff that we're doing to incorporate into the esports world has been huge for sure. And it's definitely been trying to be more of a focus for what we're doing at Big Noise right now. Being that our affiliation with Rekt is there. So we're always looking for ways, man. And I think it's smart. No artist wants to be you know, I think it's so important for an artist to be multidimensional these days, right? Not just a singular avenue. And so I think esports definitely is a huge way to break into an industry that has so much attention and can help songs, you know, blow up. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Go ahead, William. You were going to say something.
I was just going to ask one more thing on that point. You know, KDA and what Riot is doing with their own owned and operated, you know, music label, which is a little bit different than, you know, there's a whole element of games being a showcase and a channel for musical discovery. There's also an element of games publishers just getting into making other forms of art beyond games. And I'm just curious about, you know, how you view the KDA experiment, which I guess is no longer an experiment because it's a huge success within Riot. But more broadly, do you think other publishers will follow that path?
I cannot answer that question in a insightful way.
Fair point.
Yeah,
Paul,
yeah. I'm not going to sit and talk about something that I won't be able to be helpful with for your listeners. But
don't worry about it at all. I was just curious. Paul, I'm curious over to you. What were you going to ask?
Yeah, no, I wanted to push on because the Ariana Grande concert just happened in Fortnite, right?
True.
And while I didn't watch it in Fortnite, I was tuned in to Ninja Stream, who was watching it, and I think look. My feeling has always been that gaming disrupts in a massive way other industries, especially traditional entertainment. Especially things like education, which I'm going to get to in a second. But like gaming has a massive disruptive impact on these other industries. And when I watched this concert through Ninja's stream, I was blown away because there was this moment where you, the Fortnite character, right, have this sort of one-on-one moment with Ariana. And it's like you're the only person in the stadium for that moment, right? The only two people in the stadium. You can't do that with a physical concert. It's actually impossible. And so, you know, it's solidified in my mind the disruptive impact gaming could have on music. Nick, do you struggle at all with like, hey, gaming could really transform the music business and could help it, versus like, hey, gaming could really disrupt the music business and essentially not replace it, but you know, the music business doesn't look anything the way it looks today 10 years from now.
100%.
And sort of,
I mean, yeah, I still think we're at the foray, like beginning of how the music industry really looks at gaming outside of just a pure sync licensing opportunity, getting songs exposure into these big worlds of either virtual events or inside of games or whatever it is, you know? And it's like, I think we're still navigating that territory of just how helpful certain things can be, you know, and how large it can actually go. And I think it's like you're seeing the big campaigns, whether it's the Travis Scotts or the Marshmellos, really with big names coming into spaces that are already really popular via Fortnite and all these other games. So it's like, yeah, how do the kind of mid-level and beginner developing acts within music really start to utilize esports and utilize that industry in a way that can help kind of grow their projects as well? I think is a space that's still being navigated by the labels and by, you know, artists themselves for sure.
But do you see gaming as a threat in that sense, right? Like that, you know, if you condition people to that this is the kind of musical experience they can have, this is the kind of concert experience they can have, that sort of real life all of a sudden is going to fall flat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm exaggerating to make a point, right? But
yeah, for me, I mean, the whole AR, you know, Oculus stuff and just all that, I can't wrap my head around it. Someone came. I mean, I think it's incredible. It's an amazing immersive experience going into these type of worlds. And I totally get it for some sense of people, but going to a live show, there's nothing like it, right? Especially in the music business, that is the core of where music thrives, is in the live environment. People want to feel that energy in person. Someone brought this up to me the other day around sports events too, going, man, you know, we're going to have to start valuations of teams in sports are going to start to, you know, falter or go down because of all the VR capabilities that might come over the next 5 to 10 years. And does that decrease ticket sales? And what does that do to a live environment perspective for professional sports? And I just can't understand that happening. I don't see that being an effect to where it becomes such a prominent thing that it starts to become a threat, you know, to your question. Like, I think the in-person experience and like the community aspect around going to a professional game or going to a live concert, I don't think will ever be trumped by anything in the AR, like alternate reality perspective, in my opinion. And I could be wrong, but yeah, as far as a threat goes, man, I mean, I think it's just like, how can the esports industry help music, and how can music help the esports industry, right? They're so serendipitous with each other that it's like, I don't know. I think it's about coming together to figure out the cool opportunities.
And that's sort of a good segue to my next question, which is like, for Gross Labs, is gaming the common thread in everything you're doing, or that everything you're doing touches gaming in some way? Or is music more the common thread? Or
yeah, it's not, man. Music for me definitely is the common thread across a lot of this stuff. The way that I looked at our esports investment was, I had my education company, Find Your Grind, going at the same time. I had my label that had started, and for me, I was like, okay, great, esports as an overall industry, how can I start to bring in some of my operating companies and my external investments that I'm making from the venture side to be able to utilize this esports alliance that we kind of have. And so an example of that was, I built a festival called Find Your Grind University, where it was a college festival for my education company in 2019. We toured across the 10 biggest campuses in the country and put on these awesome music meets tech meets the future of work kind of festivals. And I tapped into ReKTGlobal to build out all of our esports activations. So we partnered with Twitch, and Rekt was really paramount in helping us align that partnership with Find Your Grind's festival and creating those kind of tournaments on campuses, which was great. Find Your Grind is on the sleeves of all of our esports teams, right? So it's just giving us good natural exposure there in an organic kind of marketing way. We launched a really exciting accelerator program it was a 10-week program we built with Team Rogue, which is a team under our Rekt banner. And the goal there was just to get young kids exposure into the world of esports. And so we built out a 10-week accelerator program through the Find Your Grind Foundation that was incredible for young kids to get into the space. So like, yeah, for me, it was just like, how can I have esports be just available for the things that I kind of were operating and investing in, and just as a segment to be able to filter opportunity into, I guess, is kind of how I looked at it.
I mean, it's interesting because it almost puts Rekt inside your portfolio as like a marketing arm, right? Like a way to reach young digital first, like kind of that audience, that gamer, that very lucrative gamer audience. In some ways, is that fair to sort of characterize it as the way you look at it in your portfolio?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a great investment for me. I was in at the ground floor with those guys when they were raising at a $12 million valuation. And, now we're north of 250, 300. So it's been a great investment for me. It's been a great learning opportunity for me. I don't consider myself like, in esport, I don't come from the esports world, right? Like I respect the industry. I respect where people's attention are, especially Gen Z and this younger generation coming up. I want to be involved with things where, where culture moves and all that type of stuff. So for me, it was just a great alliance, I guess, and great investment, I would say, for sure. But from a marketing capacity to bring in some of my internal companies into the esports space, for sure. From a music capacity, how can we start to create music for a lot of the esports things that are going on, and get some of my artists involved with some of their events, whatever that may be. So yeah, it was a bit of everything, man. That's kind of how I look at it, is just like, ideally the win-win scenario is finding 4 or 5 things that can all intersect like that.
And is the future of ReKTGlobal, Nick, in your mind, like I always talk about this spectrum for esports teams, right? You have on one end we focus on winning. It's all about winning. And the more tournaments we win, that's our metric of success. And then you have sort of on the other end, I would argue like the FaZe clans of the world, more, hoodie orgs, for lack of a better term, but more focused on content and things like that, right? Where do you see ReKTGlobal going and the teams under it? Like, how are you sort of guiding that business, and where would you like to see it in 5 years or 2 years or whatever the time frame you have in mind?
Yeah, great question. I first and foremost, I aligned with the 2 founders back in 2016, Amish and Dave. Amish came from the venture space, Dave came from the professional sports space and marketing space. And there was just 2 guys that had this vision for, not just saying we want to be super team focused, or not just saying we want to be this, marketing and service based arm. We kind of want to be a, conglomerate for all things esports. And I really believed in that vision. You know, they wanted to go out and find valuable franchises to put under the fold and have real teams and be real competitors when it comes to professional esports teams, which I really respected. But they also wanted to have an arm that was centralized around marketing and bringing in, you know, the State Farms of the world and other big brands that want to have exposure into the esports space. Their vision around acquisition opportunities across production companies. You know, we have an internal production company now that produces all of our content for the professional teams, right? So whenever there's a, you know, sponsor that comes in for our team, a lot of the times we'll go in and actually execute the actual, you know, filming of that and the production of that. And so I think, once again, going back to the overall ecosystem of creating a large ecosystem where things can feed each other for bigger opportunities and growing the nuclear base of all of it. Yeah, like I think it's their model around, you know, the service-based side, the ownership side, and the acquisition side around strategic companies that could really help all of the assets within the company was just interesting. It was a different approach, right? It wasn't just like, hey, we want to let's just go get this team and build the value of that team and hope that, you know, things work out in the esports industry overall. And, you know, I don't know. So I really respected the vision, and I thought it was a different way to view it. And I love the founders' energies. And so for Rekt, you know, I think the future for us is we've been an organization for, you know, almost a little over 5 years now. I think the timing right now is ripe to start looking for opportunities to, you know, sell an overall piece of the company. I know there hasn't been any major public market moves when it comes to esports organizations, and I think that's a very interesting space. I think for us, we would have to really align ourselves with another really respected organization in the space, top 5 organization that we could maybe potentially partner or merge with to create an even bigger boat to look at public offerings in the space, and you know, and work that way forward, which is new in this industry too. So a lot of things, man, we're exploring right now, but I think the future is bright.
It's interesting you say that, Nick, because we've had this discussion on the podcast. In fact, we have predicted that there would be more consolidation among esports teams, so they could go public, so they could have access to capital, right? Because you know, that venture capital is much more limited, at least, than access to, you know, public capital. And so, yeah, you know, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the path. So do you look at like an Enthusiast Gaming maybe as a model, or you think there's a more pure play approach to just consolidate teams?
Like maybe an Astralis Group, I think, is the other analog in the public markets. Yeah.
Even though they're not that big, but yeah.
Yeah, not that big, but they're I think the clearest pure play public esports team right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it's, once again, you know, as you start to think about the public market in this space and valuations from Goldman and the bigger entities saying, like, what does the future of this industry look like? And is this actually a real thing? And where can this go? I mean, the past 2 years of what COVID's done to really bring esports to the forefront as an industry, I think has actually been really helpful. And so, yeah, I mean, we're exploring it. And once again, it's like, for me, I'm learning about it. You know, I'm learning about how these things could potentially come together. And it's been cool, man, to see the things that we've been able to acquire into the business, even over the past year. You know, we brought in a group called Talent X, which was a TikTok agency that represents a ton of young influencers in the TikTok space. And yeah, so I think Rekt's approach has just been pretty multidimensional and exciting in terms of what we can offer to a more traditional, established, you know, esports group, you know, with the assets that we've been able to accumulate over the past couple of years. So who knows, man? I mean, the public side is really interesting. And I think probably for sure where a lot of companies now that are at the kind of $250, $300 million valuation range will want to get to, but it's a matter of how to get to there strategically, right? From either a SPAC perspective or traditional IPO or whatever it may be.
Yep. I mean, Nick, if you're with your sort of investor hat on, or your, you know, incubator hat on, what are some of the themes on the gaming side that you're looking for or are most excited about? Or, you know, I'm curious what the investment thesis is on the gaming side. If there's anything specific, I don't know, maybe it's more opportunistic, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it always is kind of more opportunistic. I've been so focused on the rect side of things specifically, and trying to bring in value to the overall organization there. But yeah, from an investment lens, we've seen a lot of different things. There was this group called Lamo that was really interesting for me. I don't know if you guys know those guys, but they were
Yeah.
making part physical product, part actual game that would happen in between big games like Fortnite as you wait for in between games. And so there's interesting models like that from the actual like software and actual building of games, which I've taken looks at. But yeah, man, I mean, for me, it's just been really focused on the rec side of things primarily.
It's funny you brought up Lamo because actually we should definitely get Aaron Levon on the show. I met with
Yeah.
Aaron to talk about Lamo a while ago, and a lot of what you're saying actually in terms of following passion, right, and interweaving different things that you're working on, whether it's education and nonprofit or music or gaming. Aaron actually carries himself in a similar way, right, with Truff Hot Sauce and cannabis and network with Jimmy Iovine's company. So really interesting overlap actually in comparison, I think, between two different companies that or brands that carry themselves in similar ways. Having said that, I know we're nerding out on the investment stuff. This is a business podcast. I don't want to overshadow, and you brought up a little bit about Find Your Grind. I mean,
Yeah.
besides being a world-class drummer, which I've seen Nick live, guys, albeit it was 15 years ago, world-class, incredible drummer. He's also an incredibly humble person, and I definitely want to give you a little bit more of a platform to share a little bit about Find Your Grind, as well as your opinions on the current educational landscape. Pretty much, sorry, Will, a little more runway. Pretty much, like the traditional school system of trying to force circles through square holes, right? And really what Find Your Grind is doing, I think, to provide opportunities in gaming, music, otherwise, for the next generation, for the next, for the
Yeah.
next working professional.
Yeah. I mean, Find Your Grind. There's never been a more important time, I think, to help, students and kids who are really trying to figure out what they want to do in their lives. I mean, look at everything culturally, socially, economically, with just huge shifts. I mean, even pre-COVID, right? The things that have been just shifting as far as industries go and how people genuinely find work that they not only find jobs that suit their skill sets and their strengths, but find jobs that are meaningful from a life perspective and fulfilling. And that's that extra step that I think Find Your Grind's taken in terms of how we approach that self-discovery process for young people, and then how, aligning values and interest and skill sets to careers that might make sense for you as kind of a last point. So for us, it's been like, Find Your Grind really kicked off as a live event business. I was lucky enough to create a tour inside of schools. I lived in a tour bus for 18 months, and my shows went from doing 9 p.m. to midnight slots with my band to 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. slots in high schools, which I genuinely I never enjoyed going to school. I mean, what really prompted me to start Find Your Grind in a big way was just always asking the question in school for myself of like, how is this preparing me for the real world? How is the education system that has been the same today? You walk into a school today that it was, Jimmy, when we were in school, and then 20 years before that, in many ways just been so stagnant in terms of the innovation and how we're really preparing people for what the world is like today. And the fact that that hasn't evolved in the way that so many other industries have evolved is pretty shocking to me. And so I feel, really when we went on to create these live events inside of schools, that's when it really hit me. I was like, listen, I went to high school 15 years ago. I was always questioning how this was preparing me. But now I'm still talking to kids 15 years later on all these events that we were doing on campus that still were just like, my biggest question was, what are your biggest struggles or biggest fears or biggest anxieties? And it's always like, well, I don't really know how to do my taxes, or I don't know how to, balance my, mental capacity between work and going to school and all these type of things. And I'm just like, we need more products in the space of education that really teach, well-rounded soft skills, how to go out into the real world equipped with, the right mentality towards things, the, kind of the social emotional skills that a lot of schools haven't emphasized as much. Thankfully, over the last 2 years, I think COVID has brought social emotional learning more to the forefront, which has been great, and career readiness more to the forefront. But it's been really fun, man. I know I'm kind of going all over the place with it because my brain is going faster than I can actually talk about it. But Find Your Grind is really a digital curriculum now that addresses social and emotional learning and career readiness for Gen Z. We have curriculum inside of over 1,200 schools across the country. Like I mentioned before, we've done amazing events inside of high schools and colleges all across the country, which prompted us to build this product. You know, we have over 5,000 educators that are inside of that product right now. And so it's been really great to not try and change the education system, but change, you know, insert an asset that can help guide a new conversation inside the classroom. And I think that's what's really important, and what more companies in ed tech can be doing is just helping shape the real conversations that are important, at least from my perspective, which is like, let's create well-rounded critical thinkers and people with that can tap into a skill set early on and really use that to align themselves with work opportunities, you know, not just this GPA number with a degree that isn't landing kids jobs or allowing them to make money and essentially getting them in debt for the rest of their lives. And so I think there's definitely a bit of trickery and robbery happening within the education system that, you know, people are scared to talk about, but I think is coming more to the forefront, especially with what COVID's done, with all these kids who are at home and parents realizing, like, what am I paying for? You know, and actually them seeing the courses that are being taught and all this type of stuff. So yeah, for us, man, I'm a proponent of just knowing yourself and you know, doing things that are meaningful to you, but also that you can use your real skill sets for, you know, because all of us have a talent and a skill set in something. The sooner you can be doing that, the better. Not waiting until we're 40 or 50 years old to figure that out. So Find Your Grind's been great, man. And we've been able to kind of bring that into esports in a meaningful way, like I kind of talked about earlier. And our foundation side of Find Your Grind has been amazing around the things we can do in our community. We've launched a program with the LA Chargers here in town where we're giving technology away every time they score a touchdown this year to a classroom, which is great. I think they score on average 45 to 50 touchdowns a year. So we're going to be giving, you know, well over probably $200,000 in technology to classrooms around Los Angeles. Through that, the Anaheim Ducks and the NHL, we aligned a partnership with Find Your Grind to get kids exposure into hockey that can't afford it. So yeah, it's a bit of everything, man, of just,
Didn't
you know.
Find Your Grind do something, just to bring the conversation full circle? Didn't it do something with Tony Hawk as well? I seem to remember.
Yeah, that's another one too. I mean, weirdly enough, we've been doing a lot in sports. I think it's because I'm an ice hockey player. I love sports, as we all do. And
an ice hockey player living out in LA.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. But yeah, that Tony Hawk's amazing, you know, and so we're building a skate park with him in Detroit right now, which is awesome, in a community that really needs it.
Very cool.
I was just gonna I just wanted to tie it into, because we did have a couple of news stories, but because we were on this, you know, on Find Your Grind, I want to bring this one up because, you know, more and more we're seeing gaming intersect with education in a more obvious, you know, way. And this story was, the headline here was Tribe Gaming and Razer launch a $10,000 scholarship program. And, you know, they're going to award a total of 10 $1,000 scholarships to students over the next 10 months. What was, I think, missing for me here was, you know, the goal here is to create people who are going to go work in esports and gaming. It wasn't necessarily about leveraging gaming, right, in some way to improve the education piece. I mean, Nick, with Find Your Grind, right, this is not gaming specific whatsoever. But are you looking at how gaming or gamers can make the curriculum you've developed that much more effective? Is that something you guys have spent time on, or?
You know, not really. There isn't a huge gaming focus necessarily in our direct curriculum outside of the careers that we really showcase across esports. So we have probably 15 careers within Find Your Grind's product in schools that we highlight, and kind of show their day in the life of, and, you know, how they got started within that career and really opening up the industry. I mean, most kids think that in order to get into gaming, they have to be the next Ninja or Dr. Lupo, when in reality, there's hundreds of careers inside of esports that allow you to kind of be involved in the space and you can work in. And so that's really the core of what we're doing as a curriculum, I guess, in schools. And from our nonprofit side, I'm personally a fan of the experiential side of the business. You know, like, when you actually taste and feel out what you might want to be doing, I think it totally changes the perspective. Just like, you know, going to a new home, it's different, you know, seeing a PDF of a house you want to buy versus going and actually driving up to the house and feeling out the neighborhood and seeing what it's all about. And so I think for me, it's great being able to do the experiential stuff where they can kind of get a taste of the industry. And so I don't know, in a sense, I support what they're doing there as a scholarship program, and, you know, any money that can go into helping kids get experience in the space, you know, good on them.
I'm just curious, do you see, like, is one of the, when you look at your business and especially ReKTGlobal, do you see a lack of people coming into the business with esports specific education? Do you not care, right? Would you rather them have gone through Find Your Grind and, you know, and have the, you know, the skill sets through that curriculum? I'm just curious, how do you look at esports specific skill sets as someone who employs a lot of people in the space?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, it's probably a better question, honestly, for Amish and Dave, who are running our business more on a day-to-day and hiring the employees there for the company. But I don't know. Anytime I have someone that comes through the door that wants to work for me or one of my businesses, I'm always kind of like wanting to know what skill set or what value they're bringing to the table and how well they kind of know themselves. And I know that sounds very similar to what I just talked about, Find Your Grind, but it's like, we don't really look at degrees. We do care about experience. You know, where have you been able to have experience in a certain area, you know, at least for a year or two, and have you been involved in this in some capacity? I think is huge. But yeah, more so I think now just getting in the door, just having a skill set and knowing how you can provide a certain piece of value to whatever business, whether that's esports or outside of it. And so, you know, thankfully esports in a lot of ways is such a digital virtual thing where there's a lot to learn quickly online towards certain things and certain areas to work in. And so kids can kind of train themselves in a lot of ways with that. But yeah, I don't know. I think today is so important just to kind of stick out in terms of what you can bring to the table out of the gate.
Guys, I want to move on to another story here. And this one, I'm going to try and tie it back to the music business, Nick, because, and you may not like the way I'm tying these things together. But the headline here is, Grand Theft Auto remastered games tipped to launch this year. So as we all know, you know, we had Strauss Zelnick from Take-Two on the podcast. We couldn't get him to announce when GTA 6 was coming out. Unfortunately, he didn't want to do it on this podcast, but we still don't know when GTA 6 is coming out. But Rockstar supposedly is working on, you know, remakes of GTA 3, GTA Vice City, GTA San Andreas that are all going to come to basically modern consoles. I want to compare this, Nick. I want to start with you first here, because I want to compare this to the music business doing like greatest hits collections, right? Where we take old music and we repurpose it, and hopefully it's something new that people will buy. How do you feel about this in the gaming business versus the music business? Is the gaming business borrowing something from music that they shouldn't be? Should we be focused on making new games? I'm curious where you fall on the spectrum. Put yourself, I guess, in the CEO's chair of Take-Two,
yeah,
or Rockstar here.
Honestly, I'm all about it. It's like with Grand Theft. I mean, what a popular game, what a fun game, and everyone knows that game, you know. So the fact that repurposing that in different ways and kind of taking that, you know, value of what that brand is and monetizing that as an overall organization, I'm fully in support of, as long as it isn't the, you know, 9th version of Fast and Furious. Sorry for all the Fast and Furious fans out there.
But Nick, hold on.
I like Fast and Furious.
Let me ask a more poignant question, maybe a more direct question, right?
Yeah.
In the music business, if you make a hit song, right, and then 10 years later, right, you haven't made another hit song, and you say, I'm going to go re-release that song I made 10 years ago, right? Do people look at that person in the music business and go, you know, maybe their time is up here, right? Like, chances are they're not going to have another hit if they're recycling the old stuff. Like, should we be writing off Rockstar if this is all they're focused on?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Maybe some people feel that way, but once again, once you have the hit, it's a hit for a reason. People love the song, and repurposing that song and putting that out from a streaming capacity to keep things moving, whatever it may be, remastering recordings, I think is actually pretty smart. You know, Feldy just did that with Goldfinger with Superman. We just released a newly mastered version of that song last year, actually. So I don't know. I'm a supporter of it. You know, okay, if you got a hit, keep the hits alive. People want to hear them.
I think Paul's giving you a hard time because you definitely played WoW Classic for a better part of a month, huh, Paul? So Paul's all about replaying the remastered version.
Look, hold on. So this is sort of the beef that I'm curious to get William's view on here, right? Because we've talked about Activision Blizzard a million times, not making any new games, rehashing their old games, right? Diablo 2 just came out, which is another rehash, or Diablo 2 remastered, or whatever they're calling it. Is Rockstar falling into the same trap, William, or do you not see this as a trap?
I mean, here's, I'd be curious, Nick can react to this, but here's what I think is there's nothing wrong with monetizing a back catalog. Like, that's just good business, right? Like, if you have assets that are valuable and people want to re-experience, and you can make them even better by putting a fresh coat of paint on them, or a look at, an iteration in modern game design. I think like the Demon Souls remaster is a great example of this, where they basically fresh graphics, some innovations like 8-way rolling that modern gamers would expect, but by and large, like, of course you should do it. It's just, you're not optimizing your portfolio if you don't do it. The question is that the only thing you should be doing, right? Like, that's when the problem comes in, because at a certain point where all you are doing is monetizing a back catalog, then you're really not a publishing studio anymore. You're a custodian of legacy assets, right? And I don't think it's fair to say that, for example, that is all Rockstar is doing. I think I think as an industry, we need to move away from this idea that sequels have to happen. Like, we're in live services. Grand Theft Auto 5 is like better than it's ever been. There's new content churned out every month. The game is entirely different and more expansive than it was at launch. As far as I'm concerned, we've already had Grand Theft Auto 6, 7, and 8, and they're in GTA 5, right? You just don't notice it because they're delivered on a live service business model. So, but I think this is good business practice. I think Nintendo was the one who saw the potential in this earlier with the Mario games. I think some publishers are better positioned to do this, and I think some publishers can make strategic choices about how they develop titles to produce more permanent backlog value. But broadly, I think everybody should be doing it.
It's the temptation of the easy dollar that I didn't think was Rockstar's kind of MO, right? Activision Blizzard, I'm like, I get why they do this. But Rockstar, and I think, William, you ignore the opportunity cost, right? Like, you still have to take developers who need to remaster these games. Like, it's not free, right? There's some development time that goes into this. Yes, obviously it's significantly lower, but that means someone probably stopped working on GTA 6 and went and remastered GTA 3.
Well, first of all, is there an opportunity cost, right? Like, because if there's incremental revenues, you can incur incremental costs. You can hire more people. But I do broadly take your point, which is, if this is a project a studio is working on, it's harder for them to work. Management's focus is divided. But also, I mean, like, isn't it like, why? Like, I'm not saying don't make new things. New things are critical. They're important. It's how games move forward as an industry. But why is it wrong to want to help a new generation of gamers discover a really great game? Like, I would be upset if there was no way, my kids could play, for example, like BioShock. Like, I hope there's a BioShock remastered version.
It's a great point, William. It's a great point. Can I answer that, though? And let me tie it to the music business, right? The song that you remake, the song from 10 years ago that you remake, the experience is the same, right? It's identical. So if you have your kid listen to a song that was made 20 years ago and tell them it was made yesterday, they won't know, right? They wouldn't actually know. There's nothing tangibly different about the music. With a game, like, I don't think a kid who's raised on Fortnite and and current generation graphics is going to go back and play a 10 or 15-year-old, 20-year-old game and enjoy that experience. Like, I don't buy this is a way for new generations to experience the old stuff, because I just don't think, for the same reason kids today don't play WoW. Like, you're not seeing 16 to 25-year-olds going and picking up WoW.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it, but that's why it's a remaster, and not just a re-release, right? Like they go back, they clean up the major barriers to adoption. They clean up the graphics. In many instances in remasters, they correct gameplay mechanics that would be considered obtrusive or overly penalizing today.
I'm trying to highlight, though, a difference, though, with the gaming industry, which is that they do have shelf lives. Yeah. Fundamentally, games do, and other forms of entertainment, much less so. I would say music has none. And Nick, maybe it's just because of my lack of understanding of music, but it definitely has the fewest, right? TV and movies maybe more so, but games definitely seem to have the shortest shelf life from a business standpoint.
But that's what makes the cash grab that much smarter of a decision, right? Because there is the shelf life, and they're capitalizing on an asset that eventually you're not going to ever be able to reuse GTA 3 or San Andreas before. So I think they're putting it into this new category of retro classical games, the way there's like classical music, but the difference is like you said, there is a shelf life. So let's remaster it, put it out there, grab all the cash that we can while it's still, and while there's still the opportunity, share it with a younger generation, keep our older generation, as per William's point, with brand awareness and increasing the lifespan of that asset with your audience. And then, then I don't know, then make something new. Newer doesn't always mean better, and you don't always need to make something new, I think, in order to appease your fans, especially when you're a publicly traded company and you need immediate quarterly results, right?
I would bet good money that these remasters from Rockstar don't do that well. I don't know if they'll break it out. Like I don't know if they'll break out these individual titles from a reporting standpoint. Them being a public company obviously helps for us to sort of dig in and figure out. But I don't see it.
Well, I think we can wrap this conversation with some of the great lyrics from Superman. Here I am, growing older all the time, looking older all the time, feeling younger in my mind, right? Like, I mean, that's the essence.
Are you describing yourself or Rockstar?
I mean, the professor really tying things in smoothly.
There you go.
Just forcing
the reason
that
they
segue.
call him Professor. Nick, this wraps up this week's podcast. If people want to find you, if you want to be found, where can they follow you? Where can they follow the things you're doing or the companies you're involved with?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of my socials are just at Nick Gross, and my group Gross Labs is grosslabs.com. Definitely check out Find Your Grind, findyourgrind.com there. But for the majority, Gross Labs has a lot of everything that we've kind of talked about today. And yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. I'm also launching a new project with a band called Girlfriends with my buddy Travis Mills. We're kind of doing a, pop punk alternative project right now. We're about to head out on the road September 9th with my label's tour, the Big Noise Tour, which would be fun with 3 of our acts. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on right now.
Very cool. Very cool. And I know we have a lot of people in the education space who listen to the podcast, primarily because all 3 of us teach or taught at universities esports. If they want to find out more about Find Your Grind, is there a specific place or someone on LinkedIn or somewhere they can go? Because I know we do have a big audience in the education space.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully we've been lucky enough to track down Find Your Grind URLs and everything else on every social platform. So it's really simple, just kind of, Googling or URLing the findyourgrind.com address. And a lot of it's there. We're about to relaunch a whole new, website in 2 weeks, which is great. And so a lot of momentum happening there, but we're pretty accessible through, any social platform or through the website directly.
Very cool. Nick, thank you so much for your time. Jimmy, William, thank you guys as always. For our listeners, thank you guys for tuning in every week. Just a quick reminder, don't forget, every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, we do a live stream. We cover all the news that didn't make it into the podcast, which these days, with the amazing guests we have, is most of the news that doesn't make it into the podcast. So it's become more of a news show. It's a lot of fun. We do it interactive, live with you guys. You can ask us questions, disagree, get in our faces, as many people often do with me, especially. But highly recommend you guys tune in every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. As always, don't forget William's book, The Book of Esports, on Amazon, now in Spanish. I'm not even going to attempt the title in Spanish because I will butcher it. And go check out our merch, businessofesports.shop. And we will see you guys next week.